Hi, I'm Bukeka. I'm the B.
And I'm Enolia, and I'm the E.
Together, we are Be Empowered.
The universe is calling, calling, calling. The universe is calling me to be. It's calling me to listen more, talk less, and hold the light. The universe is calling me to be.
We believe that deep in our souls, we hold conversations, but for whatever reasons, we do not always take the opportunity to speak from our hearts.
We want you to imagine that you're sitting right here with us now, sipping a cup of tea or coffee at our dining room table, and we're having that conversation. You know, the one that encourages, inspires, and motivates you to the infinite possibilities that your life has to offer.
Let us help you to expand your imagination, to create your beautiful dream into reality. It starts right here and right now, because the universe is calling you to be.
The universe is calling me to be. The universe is calling, calling. The universe is calling me to be. It's calling me.
Good morning, everyone, wherever you are, or good afternoon, or good evening. Welcome to Be Empowered, and I am so happy to be here with you. This is Enolia speaking to you, and I'm here with my dear friend and partner, Bukeka.
Hello, Enolia. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming on again for another episode of Be Empowered. How are you today, friend? How are you?
I am fine, and we are so excited to be here because we have a topic for you. Today's topic is going to be Let Fear Be the Illusion. And I'll say that again, let fear be the illusion. And, fear is something that all of us go through. There comes a time in each one of our lives when, we try to set aside our fears and take a leap, but it takes everything within us to set aside that fear. So what we want you to do is to actually start off with, what is fear defined in my life? What is fear? And do we ever define it? And instead of me just leaping right into it, I'm going to pose that to you, Bukeka. What does fear mean to you? And then I'll take my shot at it.
Well, it's such an amazing topic because it's something that everybody deals with. Everyone deals with fear. And so I would say that fear for me is simply the inability to make a decision that is going to lead me to greater good. And the reason why I say it that way is because it stops us in our tracks, right? And it keeps us from moving to a place of peace, harmony. It's the exact opposite of that. Some people say that that fear is the opposite of love, which I can see that, because love is an aspect of our well-being. It's what leads us into a greater good. But for whatever reason, we have this thing that blocks us. Now, there are certain images or past experiences or whatever that is that causes the fear, but the fear itself is the inability to move forward. It is the inability to step into a different reality. It is the inability to step into a greater good for whatever previous imaginations or situations that have occurred in the past. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does. And we all kind of define it a little bit differently. For me, I look at this way. If there was a circle and that circle was my boundary and I'm at the center of that circle, okay, my ego, my being loves to work within that circle. And that circle being my boundary is where my comfort zone is. That circle can shrink sometimes, it can expand sometimes, but that's my modus operandi. That's where I love to operate, within that circle. And then my heart desires to go beyond that, right? I want to grow in some kind of way. I want to embark on something that goes above and beyond my routine, my comfort zone, my knowledge, whatever the case may be, my circumstance. Okay. And when I go beyond that boundary, that's when I find fear. It is for me, once we go through the self limitations of our comfort zone and want to grow beyond that, that fear kicks in.
Mm.
Or if that boundary is threatened in any way, fear kicks in. So for me, it is where my ego is comfortable within a set boundary. And then once I go beyond that boundary and my ego's out of its comfort zone, then all of a sudden I'm in fear.
Mm.
Now, this is separate from survival fear. We're not talking about survival fear right now, because people are like, there's a healthy fear. I don't believe any fear is healthy, first of all. That's me, that's my take. But I don't like to look at our survival as fear. I like to look at survival as the alert that our body brings to say your physical being is threatened. That's a little bit different. And we can look at that physical being threatened as being a fearful emotion, or just the alert system that our body has to tell us, hey, keep us safe, keep us protected. Keep us safe, keep us protected. You're in imminent danger, and it has a physicality to it. But we are able to move through those situations, some of us, not all of us, not necessarily being in fear, but being in survival mode and being in protective mode. And there's a difference of saying I'm going to protect myself versus I'm petrified based on the circumstance and can't move or can't function because I'm afraid. Many of us move through those circumstances. We go into survival mode, but survival mode isn't fear, because fear halts.
Fear
Fear
does.
stops you.
Yeah.
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 So, that's just my take on it. People may or may not agree with it, but that's how I like to look at it. So when we talk about fear and we talk about it being the illusion, I don't know. I look at it in terms of there's an obstacle that seems overwhelming, insurmountable, hard, challenging, and I'm trying to get through it, and I'm afraid to move through it because I don't know what that other end looks like. I don't know, once I go past my boundary, what the outcome may be. And then what happens is that I create these stories. I create the stories of why it's too hard, why it's overwhelming, why I really shouldn't do it. Financially, people are dependent on me, or it impacts too many other people, therefore I can't do it. And I make these excuses. About why I can't get to that outcome that I'm looking at, or why I can't hold that vision for my life and for myself, because I can't figure out how to get there. And therefore I'm afraid.
Mm-hmm.
What do you, how does it impact you?
When we're talking about the illusion of fear, that's where I was really kind of sitting with this, because really fear is an illusion from the standpoint that we're talking about. And a lot of that illusion comes from experiences from our past, at least for me, experiences from my past, or even just what we would consider a consciousness, a world consciousness, or world view of various things. And these things implant in our mind. And then we, like you were saying, create stories from things that have never happened to us. All right. And I believe that we've given some examples before, but I'll just give one that's recent, just resting. And I started to go into meditation. And I started thinking about the house that I want, and just being able to move about it, and getting up in the mornings. And Eugene and I were looking at a show yesterday where the bedroom had this beautiful terrace and had glass windows. And so I started thinking about that. And suddenly, this illusion appeared. What if that window weren't locked? What if someone tried to break into the house? What if someone tried to threaten us? Now, this is all an illusion, but it's all based on fears that are already implanted in our global consciousness. The threat of people, of someone taking away or harming. And I know that's kind of a light example of it, but in a deeper sense, it goes to the fear of loss, the fear of having your dreams literally and figuratively taken away from you, the fear of what we've seen in the news, or all of these things. They're all illusions. First of all, it's the house isn't there yet, so that's not in a tangible state. And then to expand that story into someone trying to harm me, that's not happening. It's all an illusion. So most instances of us being in a place of fear is actually based on something that is not happening at all in that moment. Now, there may have been something that happened before, or there may have been something that happened to someone else that we adopt that fear, but but we know that that's not real. So if we don't recognize that and we get stuck in it, maybe we say, well, I don't want to maybe get a house by the water, or I don't want to make that certain decision, simply because we have some kind of fear in the back of our mind that it's going to be harmful to us, or we might lose something. So I do really agree with the fact that fear is an illusion, because all of it, unless, like you say, there's an imminent threat or imminent danger where we have to flee. But outside of that, it's a lot of stories that have elevated to a level of constriction based on things that haven't even happened.
You know, I really have to agree with you. We take situations, whether they're current or whether they happened in the past. So I went through a couple of different scenarios of exceeding the boundary and being fearful, right? Living your dream. You know, let's say you take your life savings and you decide you're going to embark on an endeavor you've always wanted to, and people go, "Oh, you're crazy, you're crazy." What? I wouldn't do that. I'm afraid that I would lose everything. You know, and somebody dares to try to go for their dream, and then so many people are giving them, projecting their own fears for them or to them, that they don't do or dare to try to do what they wanted to do in the first place, and then they'd never know. Trauma, everything in the past that bubbles up to the front, yes, all of those are fears, and they shape our lives. It's like the veil is lifted and you don't see through the eyes of clarity, you see through the eyes of pain, of fear, of what could happen, what happened to somebody else could happen to you. And then what happens is that as we hold the vision that's negative, we basically can bring those negative situations even to fruition sometimes, because our past traumas have hurt us so badly that that's all we know is the negative spiral or take on that particular situations. In terms of the fact that here we are in our present day and our moment by moment living now, and all we can do is think about things that have happened to us in the past that may have had a negative income influencing our decisions and our motivation to navigate through something new, literally stopping us from daring to even move towards that direction because of the potentiality of something happening.
Right.
So yeah, fear is really, really there. Now, when I talk about fear being the illusion, for me, let's play a game.
Okay.
The game is if I had no fear.
Mm.
If I had no fear, none whatsoever, None whatsoever. My name is fearlessness. What wouldn't I do? Would be the statement. So, Bukeka, if you had a superpower and that superpower was fearlessness, you feared nothing, what would be different in your life
Oh my
right now?
goodness. Well, let's see. I would go to my employer. No, I wouldn't go to. I would just call. I just text. I'd send her a text. I won't be in Monday or ever. Uh, good luck with that. What else would I do? Uh, that is a really big question. I mean, that's the first thing that came up for me. That's the big one that came up for me. I'm not sure what the others would be. You know, when you do this kind of work, you are pushed all the time to move past your fears, and when you become aware of what they are, you practice self-correction. Even with that example that I gave about just this imagination, I have to, as a person who is in this business of coaching or helping other people realize their dreams, that is something that is required of me to be conscious of and move through and be aware of how to help others do the same thing. But in my own personal life, I would say that that would be the thing that I would do. I would just send her a text and say, I won't be there. I'm done. Thank you for the opportunity and see you later. I wouldn't worry about what the other, what that reputation might be like or anything like that.
So I'm going to help you here because I'm still living it. I'm
Okay.
living it.
Okay.
Okay? So for me, I completed my corporate career.
Yeah.
I'll leave it that way. And for me, I basically was able to embark on the fact that the relationship I was in wasn't working. And then I moved from New York across the country to California by myself. And then I created a company and I dared to just go, how am I going to start this up? I'm not quite sure how. I called 12 or 13 of my friends. And I'm like, I want to do empowerment. I want to teach and focus with people. Would you please dare to host me and gather a group of your friends and let me work? And, then after 22 states and 4 countries later, I was like, I've always wanted to travel. And I'm a woman and I'm alone. I didn't care.
Right.
And so fearlessly going out and traveling. And for those of you who don't know me, I've been on many, many continents from the South America, South Pacific, Europe, Africa, traversing all of it, deciding while I was in New Zealand, I need to be in Africa, and then deciding to traverse it via Asia,
Mhm.
and the Middle East, and visiting the Middle East. And I did most 3/4 of the traveling I did by myself,
Yeah.
and a quarter of it with my partner. And people will say to me, well, how could you dare to travel as a woman by yourself? And it was just like, I didn't think about it.
Right.
I just did it. And there was at no time that I felt unsafe. There was no time that I felt like I did it within the boundaries of what made me feel safe and
Hmm.
comfortable,
Hmm.
but I did it, and so many times we hold back. We hold back on daring to do it. Now, I had people tell me, oh, you're going to be broke by X, Y, and Z. You left your corporate job. Are you kidding me? I mean, there were people who actually wished things on me because it is so unlikely that we just dare to live our lives fearlessly. And because there's risks to be taken, and because you have to be supported, and because you're so far out of your comfort zone that, oh, how can I survive if something happens, and how will I, and I didn't look at it that way.
Right.
And so what I learned is that if you hold the vibration of a certainty that all will go well and all is well and life is great, and no matter what you dare to do in the realm of uncertainty of life, that there is a higher power that always keeps you safe, that always holds every step of the way that you go, and that the people that you encounter are the people that you're supposed to be attracting, and that in attracting those people, you create a network of friendships and support system and everything else, no matter where you are in the world. It
Mm-hmm.
is this premise that if you dare to embark on, you can create and enjoy. And that, wow, that fearlessness has brought me here,
Mm-hmm.
this stage in my life over the past 15 years. And it's only been like the past 15 years that I dared to truly just say, I surrender everything because I'm going to live this dream, that it took place. But it wasn't without seriously digging deep within me to have the courage to do it,
Sure.
and having the courage to embark on it. And I I always got my biggest lessons reflecting back and looking and saying, how did I look at this? How did I approach this? And if it was that carefree, dare to do it, trusting myself attitude, everything fell into place. And that if it was that, oh, I'm afraid to do it, and fear was leading me to dare to start something, that's when things kind of fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like almost playing a game with myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a long-winded statement of, I want to play this game.
Right. In that context, there are some. I'm not the most adventurous type. I will confess to that, but I have
Mm-hmm.
done things to move past that boundary on purpose, like parasailing. Okay, I'm parasailing, and I'm a singer, so I didn't scream because I didn't want to lose my voice. All right. So all I'm doing, but instead, and here's the thing, instead of just being carefree, oh, I'm up 30 feet in the air and there's nothing below me but ocean and life. I was like, dear God, I'm just going to ride this ride because I'm doing this with the intention of overcoming my fears. I'm doing this with the intention of
Uh-huh.
overcoming my fears.
Yes.
So maybe the next time I go, I'll be able to have that freeity, that flowing of having that experience of just gliding above the water. But I did so because I was afraid. Oh, go ahead. I can tell me.
My hat's off to you. I'm so proud of you, because so many times we don't confront our fears.
Right. Right.
And I remember, I'm gonna share the story that I remember when I was a teenager, and we lived in a really nice house, and I was getting older. I was a teenager, and my mom, we had a beautiful finished basement. And my mom and my dad were like, okay, if you want privacy as a teenager more so, you can, take the basement. They didn't know that I was afraid of the dark.
Oh,
I was afraid to go in the basement when it was dark. It was just this whole thing I had. So to confront my own fear, I would be my parents' home, okay, and it was just my sister was grown, she was already out of the house, and I would be at my parents' home. I'm in high school, and I had this thing that nobody knew, that I was afraid of the dark, and I was like, how can I overcome it? Because I really wanted to take the basement. So what I started doing is, where I was comfortable at, which is on the main floor of the house, I wouldn't turn the lights on when I came home. And I would traverse the house. I would cook. I would do everything, and I wouldn't turn the lights on. And my mom would get home. She would be my dad home, and she'd get home. What? Why are you walking around in the dark? And I was like, oh, I just didn't think to turn the lights on. But little did she know, really, what it was I was conditioning myself to learn how to traverse the dark and navigate the dark.
yeah.
Now, as an adult, I'm so comfortable with the lights not being on that I'm like, uncomfortable when people turn the lights on. Oh, leave the lights off because you can see in the dark.
True.
You can see in the dark. You can move around the dark. Everybody thinks, oh, it's dark. I can't see anything. Same thing with outdoors, like I'd be hiking and whatnot. It would be dark outside and people have their lights on and I'm like, turn the light off. And they're like, no, I can't see. And I'm like, no, I can't see, because I had gotten so accustomed. And then the darkness became my friend. And yes, I did eventually take that apartment down in, the whole finished basement in the downstairs part of our home, and was comfortable with it. But it took me about 2 months. It took me 2 months of doing that activity, of coming home every night, just not turning the lights on and getting used to the dark and being aware of the sounds and that heightened sensitivity that I had that found what it was is just like I talked about that circle. I pushed my boundary out so that I had a wider circle of operation for my ego to stop creating stories about how it wasn't safe in the dark.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that why I say my hat's off to you paraselling is exactly that. You took something that you were afraid of and you might have been going, oh, not enjoying it. But none of us enjoy when we're facing our fears for the first time. It's not a fun thing to do. And it's better to be truthful with yourself than to lie to yourself. Because the only one you're lying to is yourself.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm uncomfortable. I can't do this. No excuses. I got to confront this fear. If I choose to confront this fear, many people don't choose to confront it. So my hat's off to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. My hat's off to you as well. Absolutely. Because we don't think sometimes how imprisoning those things can be, particularly if they're things like fear of heights or fear of the dark. And these are common fears, really. People are afraid of animals or things that they fear might hurt them, even though we're 10,000 times the size of it. People become afraid of how to speak. That's the number one fearful thing as far as speaking in front of other people. And it's all goes back to that illusion. It goes back to the illusion of, well, if I put myself in the desert, something might come and hurt me. If I allow myself to be vulnerable to this relationship, then that person might hurt me. And it's all based on something that has not occurred. It hasn't, I'm not in the desert for something to bite me. So why am I fearful? I'm not in the ocean right at this moment. So why would I be fearful? I am in a great relationship, but in the but in the fact that in those times when I was not, and I was wondering, well, what was my next step going to be? I could have been in that place. Well, I don't really want to be in a new relationship because I'm afraid of what happened to me because of what happened in the last relationship. So it's really important, I think, for all of us to acknowledge what are the things that are blocking us or keeping us from doing the simple things. Because once we do that, then we can move into the more challenging things, like instead of leaving the job, taking the job, taking the CEO position, or taking the leader of a not-for-profit, or taking on more responsibility based on the fact that maybe we haven't done it before, but now we're getting ready to, or leaving the job as you did, or as I want to do. Those are the things, if we practice doing those things that seem maybe trivial or less harmful, and we push ourselves out of that comfort zone, then that's going to simply prepare us for the big things that are available to us to jump through that hoop or move past that fear.
You're absolutely right. And then I'm sitting here listening to you, and my thought was this: as we look at those scenarios that are engaging us in a fearful manner, I think there are some key tips that we have to realize and that are important to talk about. First of all, well, who's the company that you're keeping? Is fear being projected onto you? Is the company that you're keeping always fearful and therefore keeps you in a fearful state? Oh my God, don't do that. Oh my God, if you did that, that would scare me. How could you go by yourself? I can't let you do this by yourself. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, those projections are huge. And what happens is that we give away our power when we take on somebody else's truth. And we do this constantly. So that's one thing. The other thing is our parental upbringing, right? So you're that child looking at your parents. And if your mom sees a spider and she jumps up on the chair and goes, oh my God, a spider, and she's jumping up and down, throwing a tantrum, going, oh my God, get it out of here because I'm afraid of it. Guess what you're going to do? Guess what you're going to adapt to? You're going to go, okay, that's how mom identifies with spiders, so that's how I need to identify with spiders. The likelihood of that is very, very high. We take on the fears of our family because that's all we know as children. That's the belief system. And the belief system says, you may not go anywhere by yourself. You're just a girl. Or you should be afraid of spiders. They could bite you, and look at me. Whatever the case may be. That limiting belief is our foundation. And so we grow up as an adult believing in that limiting belief and then having to overcome it when it's confronting us as an adult, if we even choose to, or we just stay in the reaction of our limiting belief of how we were brought up, and that's it, right? So where is that limiting belief coming from, right? And then the other piece of this is also just basically on when you think negatively in a fearful situation, we keep forgetting that we are manifestors. And we manifest that which we believe in. And the reason why we manifest it is because we are already responding to a negative outcome. And so when you're already responding to a negative outcome, your decisions fall into place and that vibration takes over, and then your life becomes a walk to that negative vibration.
Say that again.
We're already
That was powerful.
vibing on that negative outcome. And then I'll give you a perfect example. My ex-husband, I knew that I had to deliver a decision to him that he was just going to have a fit about, because he's had a fit about it in the past. And so I'm already like vibing on the fact that, oh, he's going to go off. What do? I deliver that very statement that I need to deliver him in the way that he definitely goes off, because I'm expecting it. And so I say it in the manner by which it triggers him, because I'm already there that he's going to, and I trigger him accordingly, and he goes off accordingly. Now, here's the kicker. It took me about 10 years and a change in my own being when that same scenario came up again, because it came up again and again and again. I always had to deliver information to him that he would just go off on. He would react to and go off on. It was like, oh, I don't even want to tell him because I don't want to deal with it. And then when I finally got to a point, I was like, I don't care how he takes this information. It's got to happen. And actually, he's not going to go off at all. He's going to be able to be fine with this, and I'm going to go my merry way. And then really, I'm very detached from the outcome because the information has to be said. So I get home and I'm talking to him, and I just say it matter-of-factly, and by the way, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, okay. And that was like the biggest smack in my face and the rudest awakening I ever had, which is that I caught it. I had envisioned a negative outcome, therefore the words that came out of my mouth were delivered in such a way that it posed that negative outcome. It brought it forward. It brought in that outcome fully. And when I finally detached from the outcome and I didn't anticipate his reaction, it wasn't there. That was a powerful, rudest awakening I ever had. So Audience, I hope you're listening to some of these tips.
Uh, that, like I said, I'm so glad you said that again, because it's so true that when we adjust our thinking, the circumstances will actually adjust as well. And I have so many examples of that. Oh my gosh. So um, I was in a position a long time ago, and I was miserable, miserable. Okay. And what I did is that I began to practice what I would say to the person that I felt was a cause of this pain, this situation. And so I practiced how I really wanted the situation to go. And I didn't have any control if that person was going to respond in the way that I wanted them to, but I simply practiced how I was going to deliver that information. And it was one that I knew I was going to be leaving the company, but I was not going to leave it without having saying something that I felt was really important. And that was the scary part for me. And I don't know why it was so scary. I knew I was going to be leaving. I knew I was going to be making that change, but it was the fear in the same way of confronting that individual, not a person that I really knew well. So like I said, I had no idea what that response was going to be. The only person that I could affect any change over was me, and overcoming that situation, that fear within me. So I practiced in the mirror. I built up the courage. I made the decision of the words that I wanted to say, how I wanted to be in integrity and be that which I wanted to be. So when I did that, it was a situation, the response was totally opposite of what I thought might be, that they might try to hold my pay or do something to me in retaliation or whatever. And it didn't turn out like that at all. It was kind of the same situation as you. So when I got into the mirror and I practiced saying what it was that was important to me, why I felt like I needed to say this, um, and that has carried me over and over again, because I've had other situations dealing with not just job, but race and just certain circumstances in terms of being in meetings or in company of other people where things need to be said. I'm so glad I did it in that moment, because it just set me up for future situations that are going to occur, because you're dealing with life, you're dealing with people. But that was a step that I took, to stand in the mirror and just put on the belief, the words, the desired outcome, put on the desired outcome and step into it and practice it, put yourself in it and live in that moment. And then when it's time to actually experience that situation, you're better prepared. You're dealing with the fear before the situation comes. And so that was something that I felt was very helpful for me in that moment.
I think of the series of moments that I was fearful. And what I've noted in my life is that I actually literally have to tell fear to get to the back. And what that means is that I have to make a conscious effort of saying, I will not be afraid of this. I am detached from the outcome. Whatever the outcome is, life is nothing but a series of outcomes and a series of protocols and a series of navigation through the journey of life. And so if I let go of the outcome, if I let go of the expectation, there's nothing to be afraid of, because the agility of life is being flexible to handle whatever stories come your way. In understanding that I can navigate through life, even though I may not like the outcome, that I don't have to creep into the emotion of fear and a reactionary emotion, but have the agility to navigate through the story of what's facing me that seems insurmountable or hard to overcome. And then I can put it behind me. I can deal with whatever outcome comes, no matter what it looks like. Because isn't that what life is in the first place? So why move through life in a fearful way? Why do I need fear as an emotion leading me ever? Because even if it's a state of survival and where I feel I need to be protected, I need clarity of thought. And fear clouds you, and fear halts you. And so isn't it that we have to get through our fear to even deal with the most egregious of traumas? So for me, I've learned to dig deep within my courage, dig deep within for that woman that has strength and finds her way to the surface of, I have to get through this and fear is not serving me right now. So let me find my plane that I can move through this story.
Yes. Yes. There's one thing that we haven't talked about, that's the fear of being rejected, the fear of people not wanting to engage. And I think that that comes from a sense of not feeling worthy. And that is another aspect of fear that is very important for us to recognize. When we don't feel like we're worthy, when we're confronted with situations where it seems like our worth is on the line, then we automatically have this sense that they're not going to want to engage, that that they are rejecting or pushing us away. And that sense of fear comes from a lack of self-worth. And so I also think that when we become to know how worthy we are of that which we want, that also moves fear out of the way. When we no longer have to concern ourselves with what we think other people are going to think about us, because that is one thing that definitely stirs the fear. When we are concerned about people's perceptions about who we are, that stirs the fear within us. When we no longer have that because we have stepped into a sense of knowing our worth, knowing our true selves, knowing that we are confident, knowing that we are powerful. When we have that sense of knowing that comes from worthiness, that steps us over the fear. That steps us over the fear and into the great experience that we are here to have as living beings on this planet. So that's how I'd like to leave our listeners with, knowing that your worth is so amazing that you have nothing to fear.
You're absolutely right. And to complement that, I would add also that it is this fear of not pleasing people. What we need to do, this is about, again, worthiness and standing in your authenticity and understanding that you are valuable enough and you are worthy enough and you have no need to please the people. And if the people don't see the value by which you stand, then they're not the right people for you. And I say that when I listen to authors who are famous authors, and they talk about being turned down 200 times for their book and sending it everywhere. And now they are a best-selling author because they finally found the strength and the courage to print independently on their own and be their own sponsor, or they found somebody who saw the value in their worth and finally sided with someone regardless of what the institution or the industry or whatever the beings may be have declared. You have to believe in you. You have to believe in you. And that's the complement to what you said, Bukeka, because that understanding the value means that you are not defining your value by others and by others' viewpoint of you, but that you're defining your value by you, and that the right others will follow you.
I'm going to tell
Maybe
my audience right now, that part right there was a special message for me. I can see it. I can hear it.
no. I just think that that is a great place to leave the audience.
Yeah. Well, maybe I just needed to hear that then. Well, Enolia, once again, this has been a wonderful experience on Be Empowered to move past our fears. Yeah, we have them. And so we just need to be able to say, this is not for me. This fear is not for me. So what is for me? My good is for me. The love that I have for life is for me, and living in that place. And I'm so grateful that you brought this topic up to our for our podcast today. It was wonderful.
Thank you so much, Bukeka. And I would just leave the audience with this. Fear is an illusion because we create it. So in as quick as you create it, unravel it. And I'll leave it at that.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for listening to another episode of Be Empowered. We hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. And thank you, Enolia. Much love to you, sister. Until next time.
Thank you, Bukeka. Much love to you and much love to our audience. And thank you for taking the time for listening and joining us. Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed the show. We look forward to bringing you more shows in the future. To learn more about our co-hosts, check out their websites, www.bukekastyle.com and www.enolia.live. Learn about their masterclasses for conscious transformation, their personal coaching, along with their international retreats and expeditions. Are you an entrepreneur looking for another line of income? Check out www.planetmarketing.com/Enolia and www.planetmarketing.com/bblakemore. We are here to transform your life. Thank you for listening.